Well, hello and welcome to Stop Let's Team Up. I'm here. We're here to do a little talk a little Justice League, Justice Society team up. And Ron from Fantastic Comic Fan is with us again. Say hi, Ron.
Hey there. Hi, Ross. It's been a long time, Ross. It's been almost 24 hours since we talked. Right?
Yeah.
We're on a marathon taping session on his end. I've got a bunch of tapings going on, and Ross has no idea what he's taping for this stuff, and we're taping another one for my show, and who knows when they'll be out. They'll be up.
And yesterday I taped 4 episodes and 2 more today, and then I'm gonna edit like crazy.
After you, I got 2 more, and I don't know how many I did yesterday. I probably did 6 or 7. I probably did a dozen since like Thursday.
Oh Jesus!
I know. I have no life. We know that, Ross. But anyways, we're here to talk about not my life, but the life of the JLA and JSA.
Yeah. And we're gonna do this is I think you suggested this, and I jumped at it because this is one I remember fondly, and I liked it. It is the Murder Among Us: Crisis Above Earth 1, and it is the death of the original Mr. Terrific Terry Sloane.
Yes,
I think this is the first comic I ever read where he had a predominant part in it.
Correct.
Yeah, because I've read the other JLA, JSA team that he appeared in, but I read those like years later in trades.
He's never had, up to this point, he's never had a big appearance in any of the Silver Age revival of the JSA.
He appeared in like 3 different adventures, but he doesn't have
much to do.
Yeah, but that's also the nature of those comics. It was just a lot of jump from action scene to action scene. So this was in Justice League's 171, 72 in 71 was cover dated October 1979, and 172 would have been November 1979. So 3 months before. So July and August of that year was when they would have come out.
We were talking yesterday, Ross, 2 points. One, I started collecting comic books in 1977, and anything from 77 through about 79, 80, I don't care how crappy it is. It just shines in my childhood spotlight.
I'm the same way. I mean, my first, I know, Avengers 105 is pretty good, except Hawkeye's in the miniskirt. And my first Justice League was Justice League 100.
And this is a trend that DC had started where they actually killed characters off. And we talked about that yesterday because we did the death of Iris Allen. But during the same time frame, they did the death of Aqua Baby. Yes, Mira and Arthur had a son for a year that was born in the Silver Age. They killed off the Silver Age Batwoman. They killed off the Earth 2 Batman. They killed off Mr. Terrific. So, and all these characters stayed dead. It's not like today where they're resurrected in 2 months and everything's good. But no, these characters stayed. And I thought it was a great story for 2 particular reasons. One, it broke a mold started by Len Wein. Guys who don't know Len Wein, Google the name, very important, who in 100 added a 3rd team or world to the team-ups, because that 100 brought back the 7 Soldiers of Victory. Later on, they brought in Earth S, the quality characters, and all these other things. Here's just the JLA and JSA, and it's the first time that they killed off a legacy character.
Yeah, and this is, we talk about legacy characters in modern comics because it really, DC leaned into it a lot in the noughts and in the 1990s and the early 2000s.
Yes.
That because when you had a combined universe, you could go that, that characters learned from the generation before him. And then John Ostrander created the modern Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, who's a great character.
Yes.
Great character. He became very important in
everywhere.
He's the smart guy that everybody goes to now. And he Terry Sloane is just a Renaissance man.
Yeah,
he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just the 3rd smartest man in the world.
He originally appeared in Sensation Comics #1 back in 42, along with Wonder Woman.
Yeah, did he have a long run?
He had a 7-year run all the way through. 7-year run all the way through issue 63 in 1947. So that was a pretty good run for a golden age character. And like you said, he had a photographic memory. He had Olympic level athletic skills, martial arts expert, mastery of everything. He graduated college at 13, according to this stuff, and became a renowned business leader in the community. And in his early 20s, he felt like he had accomplished everything in life. Life had no meaning. He actually was getting suicidal, whatever. And that's when he decided to become Mr. Terrific. And his nickname was the Man of 1,000 Talents.
Yeah, I like it. He had the big shield on his shirt that said
fair play. Yeah,
I have a T-shirt with that logo on it.
And it was
one of my favorite T-shirts.
And it was a red and silver green tunic costume. He was, and I didn't know this until when I was doing my research, he was never official member of the JSA back in the
Yes, he was. See, that's no. See that no.
He was a reserve member.
Yeah, well, he appeared in an issue that made him a member, and then he became a reserve member.
Yeah, and
he was Superman and Batman. Made you a member. It's just if you weren't in the book,
he only was in member. Like a couple of.
He's only in one issue of the actual All-Star Comics.
Two.
Was he in two? Okay,
I don't know which ones. I don't know which ones he was. But his first JSA appearance was in issue 37 of Justice League.
Yeah, it's the third team. That's the third team up. Third team up.
And even after he died, Roy Thomas, he used him a little bit in All-Star Squadron. Again, just kind of sprinkled him in here.
He's in the background. He's
nothing
never,
major.
I think Johns used him in some, because when Johns was and Robinson were doing Justice Society,
he probably was in the Golden Age. I haven't read that.
He was in
another great comic.
Yeah, he was also in. They did before Justice Society started. They did a set of one shots.
Yes.
That would have the Golden Age version and the modern version. And there was one there. I think it was Sensation Comics was the one that was Mr. Terrific's.
And once again, we're looking at the creative team, and once again, here we are, Ross, talking about Gerry Conway again.
Jesus, man, he writes everything that we do right now.
What did he write? Yes, we did.
He wrote both things yesterday, didn't he?
No, he Carrie Bates. We did the Death of Iris Allen.
Oh yeah, Carrie Bates.
And what was the other one we take for you?
Oh God, man, I'm old and tired.
I don't remember now.
Shoot.
Oh my gosh, it was only yesterday. Ross was terrible. I don't remember.
Marvel 2 and no, that's right. That was Marvel Team Up.
Oh, that was
Marvel 2 and 1. That was Mark Wolfman.
We're talking about today because the other taping we're doing for me is Super Team Family, where it had Adam and team us with Gene Loring going nuts back in the 70s. Gerry Conway wrote that one. That's what we were doing. Yeah, we talked about Gerry Conway a lot.
Yeah, well, it's in the 70s when he just worked. I mean, he filled in gaps when they didn't have writers. And I think for Justice League, he took over after Len Wein and wrote it for a bit.
Yeah.
On and off. Yeah. And then he came back and wrote it for.
Do you mean Conway?
Yeah, Conway.
Conway wrote it all the way to the end, Justice League.
Oh, he took over from Wein in 115 and wrote it to the end, and maybe
Englehart had it in the 140s.
That's right. There was a gap. Okay.
Englehart had it in the 140s, and when Englehart left, he took over and wrote it all the way through 85. And Gerry Conway is such a big figure. People don't realize how much of the Bronze Age has his fingerprints all over
on both companies.
Yeah, and we don't specifically point to Gerry Conway. It's just some of his stuff is just so iconic. He just keeps popping up all over the place. If you got the DC app, they've been slowly adding the Secret Society of Supervillains, which is another Gerry Conway project.
Yeah, and I've been doing the Freedom Fighters with.
And that was another Conway project.
Yeah, it was. And then finally it would be, he would plot it, and then Rozakis or someone else would script it. And then eventually it became Rozakis's book.
And you can't forget about Dick Dillon. He had a 12-year run on this title.
Yeah, and the only reason he left it is because he died.
He had a heart attack, and George Perez took over. And that's how George Perez became the JLA artist, one of his favorite titles. And yeah, that's how that all came about.
Yeah. But this two-part story I liked is because and this is continuity was king, that he shows up in the end of the Justice Society issue, that this comes from one Justice Society story. There's this two-part, and then it goes back into Justice Society's continuity.
Yes.
So you knew exactly what it was.
Which is rare for DC.
Well, not at that time. Not really at that time. They were really kind of hacky. I mean, especially if you were right, you were Levitz was big on it. If he was going to have his characters do something,
Yeah, you're right. Levitz was about.
He
good
would have
about that.
gone, and it was nice because in this, there's a lot of nice things that happen in this, and they're a couple. One, it's a murder mystery.
A locked room, basically a locked room murder mystery. Basically, they're all in the satellite, the big satellite, but it's a locked room mystery, and you get Batman playing Sherlock Holmes, which I mean, he really does.
And
play
Flash,
detective.
Earth One Flash going, I'm a police scientist studying the clues.
Yep.
So they do it all.
Yes.
But you have nice moments where, he has a little moment before he dies, talking about why he's come out of retirement to come to this meeting. And you have some other things is because the Golden Age Batman has just died recently.
Yes.
This is like 2 months out, 2 issues, it's not that far after it. So there's a wonderful moment Conway writes in there where Helena and Bruce talk
Earth
about their
One.
grief.
Yes.
It's a really nice, I had forgotten that was in there. It's a really nice touch. This is a really good 2-parter.
It's
Sometimes
good with characters because you
Yeah.
expect the JLA JSA to be big battles and doing this and doing that, and you really don't do a lot of character development. And this has just got a lot of good stuff with characters in it.
And this is one time where almost everybody had the big guy, you had both Flashes, both Hawkmen. You didn't have both Supermans. You had both Green Lanterns.
Yes.
But for Batman, you had Huntress, and for Superman, you had Power Girl.
Yes.
So it was kind of like the odd man out was Mr. Terrific and Red Tornado.
Yep. Yes.
Which I like because this is my era, and I really love the Red Tornado in the satellite area.
Correct.
But this was a really solid comic. It was,
it was good, but correct me if I'm wrong. Spirit King hadn't appeared anywhere else, had he really?
I would look Flash villain because the Flash said he fought him. So is he not? Was he a made up?
I think he was made up because I went looking for research for this, and I was like, I couldn't find him. And basically, what happens is that the Spirit King takes possession of Jay Garrick the Flash, and Jay Garrick, spoiler people, Jay Garrick actually kills Mr. Terrific. But it's actually the Spirit King possessing his body, and that's how it happens. But I didn't think I saw the Spirit King anywhere. And when I did my notes, it was like this was the first appearance of the Spirit King.
It is first appearance. It's actually, and I'm looking in the thing. In DC fan database. This is his first appearance, and his ultimate death is JSA 62.
Oh, so
They brought him back. Yeah, they brought him back.
What are you talking about? JSA 62 later on, or
2004 JSA?
See, because I don't think in the Bronze Age, when JSA goes back to avenge Mr. T's death, Mr. Terrific's death, I don't think it was played out in the comic books at the time. I don't think that plot point was ever solved. I think it was solved years later in that JSA. I don't remember reading the JSA because by this time JSA was in Adventure Comics, if I'm correct. And
it just moved because because All-Star Comics have been canceled.
Also, because the opening of the Adventure Comics was one of legacy titles of DC. It'd been around since almost, was it before Action and Detective or right
Adventure
around
Comics?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think it's about the same time. They're really close. I don't know off the top of my head.
But Adventure Comics went to their dollar format for about 6 or 7 issues. And JSA got moved there when All-Star Comics got canceled in the first 2 issues with the death of Batman. But that JSA story only lasted for about 4 or 5 issues. And then it lost it. There was no, and I don't understand back then when Adventure Comics went back from a dollar comic down to a regular sized comic book, why they couldn't find a place anymore for JSA. Because it was popular back then because JSA was, it was popular back then. You had JSA, you had All-Star Squadron floating around. You had the big DC special, had the origin of the JSA, which you'd never had before. I mean, they were really hitting the JSA heavy in the late 70s. And then after Adventure Comics, it never appeared again until way after into the 90s.
Yeah, I've never really understood that. I think it's kind of like what we're seeing now with DC is they had this was big. Jeanette came in for a reason.
Yes.
The company really had to kind of cut costs to recuperate, and they recovered very well because one, they brought in a publisher,
Yes.
who's someone who knew how to market.
And Jeanette stayed on to DC until the early 2000s. So she was
And
there
then she found her editor in chief I think she slowly found her and Paul Levitz worked very well together. I think the quality of the books are because of them, the quality of talent they started to recruit, the innovations they did, like the Baxter. Look at Legion 10 years later.
Yes. Look at DC 10 years
well,
later.
no, 10 years later, Legion of Superheroes is a top 5 comic. Teen Titans is a top 10 comic.
Yep.
Because they went out and pilfered talent.
And they also really helped develop the direct market because when she first
they were the leaders in it.
Yes.
They were the lead. She was the leader in it.
And
for good or bad.
Carmine Infantino, I think he was pretty much the publisher straight through most of the 70s. Yeah, he had to have been because I remember I was doing some other research. I don't know when
and
he
that's
became
why
editor.
we talked about that before. Before that, I think that's why a lot of the editors were artists.
Yes.
And it was Ross Andrew, Joe Orlando, all that.
Dick Giordano was a big editor back in the late 60s because
Paul hired editors.
Yes.
He didn't know. And that's a good thing. And I think modern comics miss it because Gerry Conway is a good editor. Ross Andrew is actually the editor of this comic.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. He's
that's right. We talked about that yesterday.
Ross Andrew, he had one of his titles.
We were talking about that yesterday because Ross Andrew
and Ross Andrew was a good editor.
And he was a great artist. It was so funny because he talked about this on the taping yesterday that he was this great big artist. And then he switched back away to DC and he really didn't do any really drawing for like the next 10 years.
I think Gerry Conway may have written the Spider-Man that Ross Andrew drew when he was a regular artist after Gil Kane.
We were talking again, Gerry Conway and most of these writers were just writing comic books just to write comic books. They didn't know if comic books were going to be back for the next 10 years or whatever. And
they never knew when it was going to die.
No. And Gerry Conway is so funny because Gerry Conway is so iconic. There's so many things that Gerry Conway has done that's rippled straight through to this day.
It's a big thing in my house because my wife watches Law and Order in a loop.
See, and people
he said he's the head writer of Law and Order for over a quarter century.
And eventually when, like you were saying, when after the death passed, the current Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, who took on the name, became the big guy in the DC mythos. He's everywhere. Michael Holt is, and he's I love Michael Holt. He's a great character.
I'm one of the DC directive DVD Blu-ray movies, which called The Fatal Five. The JLA lineup is Superman, Batman, Mr. Terrific, Jessica Cruz, Green Lantern.
Yes.
And then Tom Caller, Starman. And it was amazing. And he became a big deal. He was Paul Cooperberg used him in Checkmate.
Yes. Yes.
He was one of the kings.
Conway was the guy who killed Gwen Stacy. He co-created Firestorm. In his JLA run, he brought Zatanna on the team.
This is right after she joined, and she's in her ponytail. And
that's a terrible outfit, folks. What were they thinking about? And
it was the 70s. It was,
and the next one wasn't much better. It had this big white capey thing that was horribly, terribly also. But Conway also did a few issues later, the Secret Society story, where the villains got the identities of the characters' secret.
That had to be finished off in a Justice League story after that was canceled, which is one hero.
And Conway did that, and that whole story point ripples over into Identity Crisis by Meltzer. So all these things that Conway did in the 70s,
these are all iconic stories. These are all, and this one I think is a forgotten one.
It is a forgotten story.
It is, and I think because at this point, some of the JLA JSA team ups were just there. They weren't bad. They weren't great. No. They weren't iconic. And every once in a while,
this one stands out.
This one does. And I don't know what podcast I was listening to. They covered the JLA JSA Legion one, which I even as a Legion fan went. But the thing I liked about it was that you had a small number of people. You didn't bring everybody in like in certain events.
This is the first one. You're right. This is the first one where they didn't throw everything in the kitchen sink into the issue.
They had taken a breather because the last three had been huge.
Was this They hadn't. No, it was later when they brought in the new guys later on.
That's the one where Dillon passed, and issue 2 was like 4 or 5 pages of Dillon, and then it was George for the rest.
And I think Paul Levitz wrote the JLA JSA Legion story. If I'm
Yes, he did, because it was
correct.
a Legion story.
And that worked. And that worked because it was a giant size. But some of these
2 giant size issues.
two giant size issues. But if you go back to like the Earth X with the Freedom Fighters, even with the Earth S, which was the Shan family, some of them issues, because they were like 17 pages. And I think they were like 3 issues. But sometimes
And then there was the one where the heroes of the past.
that was the it was a 2-parter with like Viking
Enemy
Prince,
Ace,
yeah. But some of them issues felt like really jammed in there. You just really didn't have room to breathe anything. I mean, when you got the JSA, JLA, Freedom Fighters, all that, just wow,
See, I like the Freedom Fighters one. That one's pretty.
Well, I do like it, but you don't get a chance.
Because that's
to really
Len, though. See, that's Len's writing it. It's a he's.
But you don't get a chance to really develop a lot of characterizations like you do in this one. It's a small group.
No. This one is.
I like when you have moments.
Yeah, I think Gerry is at this point, he's getting to be a better and better writer. And he's also he started at Marvel. So he understood that the soap opera is necessary and not just the generic kind of like he makes Gene go crazy. Is he the one that makes Gene go crazy? Or is that Len?
No. Gene goes crazy. No, Gene going crazy goes all the way back to that Hawkman, and Danny O'Neill did that.
That makes sense.
Danny O'Neill did that.
Danny was a little harsher.
Yeah.
With what he did to people. He would give them some real, he would change them. And it's the beginning of, in DC, more cause and effect. That if something bad happens to somebody, they don't just rush, there's no reset at the end of the issue.
Before you wrap your thing up, I just want to mention that Gerry Conway again writes us all the way to the end of the JLA series during the time of crisis. And not all Conway stuff is stellar stuff. There's some bummers in there, but he did some really great stuff, like when his JLA totally disbands, and Aquaman comes back and does some people liked it, some people didn't, the Justice League Detroit era.
I've never really read all of that, so I was in college, so I was like,
it's not my favorite thing, but I liked how he disbanded the team and restarted it. And basically he took out all the top tier people, Superman, Batman, because they didn't have the time to devote to the Justice League like they should.
And I'm a big fan. I was chatting with a gentleman who is maybe coming on to talk Avengers with me, and he was talking. He's probably 10 years younger than I am because of where he started reading and his favorite. And he's kind of like, he likes the lineups where you don't have the big threes. I like a team. And I kind of like the idea of the Justice League Detroit is where you have, you have John and you have Aquaman and you got Zatanna and Ralph.
Yes.
But then you have all these new people.
I like the satellite era JLA.
I do. It's the first stuff I read. So I really like it, but the good thing about that is you never knew what team members were going to be in it issue to issue. You use the team members that you needed for the story.
And the JLA had during this time period, the JLA had a huge roster. They just
because during the satellite era, you got Zatanna joined, Elongate Man joined. Hawkgirl showed up a lot more often. She wasn't a member. Yep. Firestorm,
Englehart,
Red Tornado,
Englehart. That's another iconic run, folks. People read it. Englehart brought in Hawkgirl, and he revived Red Tornado. That came from Englehart. He made her.
No, Len Wein did that.
No. Len Wein brought him in there, but then the Red Tornado died again, and he was gone for several years. And Englehart brought him in right around 144. Look, yeah.
How about that? Yeah. He died a couple times.
Yeah, he died. I love the Red Tornado. I don't like the current iterations of the Red Tornado, but I like the classic Red Tornado that they had.
I like him when he was in Peter David's Young Justice as a mentor. He's really good. The costume's terrible.
We strayed from the topic, Ross. Is there anything else you want to say before we
wrap this up folks, check this out. This is one of those. It's on the app. It's too really good. It's really good Dick Dillon art. Yes. He's inked like Frank McLaughlin, who was his go-to inker for most of his run, especially the later run. And I think when near the end of his run, people he's been doing it too long. Get someone flashy, and then he died, and George took over, and there's a huge change. But because you got to think that this book was Mike Sekowsky, Dick Dillon, and then George Perez.
In 20 years.
Yeah.
15, sorry.
15 years.
Oh, 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, Sekowsky did like 70 issues, 60 issues, and then Dillon did the next 2/3. And then George didn't do it that long.
No, he did not. I think he went to
He had
Marvel
other things.
shortly.
He had bigger things on his plate. So, well, folks, Ron, where can people find you?
I am Fantastic Comic Fan. I'm on all the major services and minor services. I'm all over the place. I'll give Ross my link tree where you can find out what I'm doing by following me on Twitter and Instagram. Ross, thanks again for having me on today. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. And again, folks, I don't know when this is going to get posted, so I'm not going to plug anything because I don't know what will have dropped. I'm just trying to get a little bit of ahead, but we will. I've got Legion coming every Wednesday. Starman is either, if you're listening to this, it may have premiered or may be nearing premiering. And other good things coming up. So remember, be safe, be smart, be kind to one another, and read some comics.